This week on Vaticano, despite the pandemic, the Vatican's Bambin Gesu Pediatric Hospital continues to treat children with grave illnesses. We bring you the story of a successful bone marrow transplant for a child also battling the COVID-19 virus. And the Pope's top diplomatic envoy to the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, shares the Holy See's perspective on the continued restrictions of large public gatherings and their effects on the celebration of the Mass. Also, we'll bring you two stories of how beauty is getting people through the pandemic, starting with the summer residence of the popes in Castel Gandolfo. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. On June the 6th, 2020, after being closed for almost 3 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Pontifical villas of Castel Gandolfo reopened their doors to the public. And as they did so, they sent out a very special message.
Abbiamo riaperto senza voler dimenticare quello che ci è accaduto.
We reopened without wanting to forget what happened to us. That's why our first emotion is gratitude. And we wanted to make this gratitude tangible by offering all the hospital health personnel the possibility to come and enjoy this beauty, immersed in nature for free.
Surely it is a gesture that touches our hearts. It recognizes the work we have done and allows us to be thanked and at the same time to give thanks.
Essere ringraziati e allo stesso tempo ringraziare. La fede aiuta sempre, nel bene e nel male, e diciamo che
Faith always helps in good times and in bad. This opportunity to be together certainly helps to forget a little bit about the unpleasant aspects of this period.
a dimenticare un pochino le brutture di questo periodo.
A symbolic gesture dedicated to all those who have fought on the front lines against the virus, from doctors to nurses, chaplains, and health technicians. Each has faced the suffering and loneliness of this pandemic in a different way, but they all agree on one thing: unity and solidarity have been decisive in facing this tragedy.
Io, come responsabile, sono stata sul paziente meno degli altri.
As the one in charge, I was in contact with patients less than the others, but my task was to keep everyone together and to give to everyone, even in moments of discouragement, the strength to move forward, because the initial moments were very challenging. I have to say that the fact of being all together, of being one group, doctors, nurses, and all the staff working with the patients, that had a tremendous psychological impact on the patients. The fact of being all together was our success, and I tried to encourage this spirit and this sharing of suffering, but with some accomplishment.
Sofferenza, ma anche di qualche soddisfazione.
Anzitutto abbiamo cercato di capire che cosa stesse accadendo.
In the beginning, we tried to understand what was happening, because at the start, this pandemic experience was new for everyone. We tried to choose the best way to be close to all those who were suffering, both the sick and the healthcare staff. The healthcare ministry does this. It accompanies people in the world of health and healthcare, whether they are sick or the healthcare personnel, the doctors and nurses. And so we sought not to leave anyone alone. This was not easy because the pandemic prevention measures forced us to change our working method, our pastoral method, but we learned quickly.
Io sono credente e il momento più difficile per me è stato vedere I primi decessi.
I am a believer. The hardest time for me was to see the first deaths without saying goodbye, without a farewell from family members, without a farewell from the chaplain. At that moment, it was very difficult for me to accept what I was doing. Father Massimo, our chaplain, was with me yet another time. So let's say that it was difficult, but faith helped me a lot to accept it.
Avrebbero comunque avuto il loro estremo saluto, quindi diciamo che è stato difficile, ma mi ha aiutato questo.
Dio è a fianco di ognuno.
God is by everyone's side by side with everyone who has undergone this experience directly or indirectly. And we have many testimonies from people who have recognized and encountered Him in this experience. The solitude, the distance that was imposed on us, the isolation in intensive care was a great challenge for all of us. Also, from a human point of view, being alone in the illness means doubling the fatigue, doubling the pain. It all becomes more difficult because in the illness, you need someone to be with you. But if the relatives couldn't do this because it wasn't possible to be close to them, then there were the chaplains, the doctors, the nurses, who also, with their testimony of faith, represented God's closeness to each of the sick. So as far as possible, we tried not to leave anyone alone.
Apostolic Palace at Castel Gandolfo has served as the summer residence for the Roman pontiffs for 3 centuries. The pontifical villas comprise about 135 acres, of which 75 make up the gardens and 25 are used for farming. October the 22nd, 2017, Pope Francis decided to open up the private apartments of the Roman pontiff to the public, as they were no longer being used by him. Pope Francis has only visited the palace a couple of times since his election in 2013. He's never spent the night here. For some, his decision can appear strange, but in the history of the structure, only about half of the popes have actually used this summer residence during their pontificates. Here, visitors learn about the history of the papacy and the relationship of the popes with the people. For instance, there's a papal bedroom where John Paul II recovered after he was shot. Visitors can also explore the private study where so many pages of magisterial texts have been written. And they can even pray in the private chapel of the popes. During the Nazi occupation of World War II, Pope Pius XII safeguarded Jewish civilians in this very palace. The property of the Papal Palace includes, together with the apartments, the Astronomical Observatory and the Papal Portrait Gallery. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. The Vatican's Specula Observatory is one of the oldest astronomical institutes in the world. It dates back to 1582, when Pope Gregory XIII formed a committee to reform the calendar, which was later named the Gregorian calendar after him. The committee included the Jesuit Father Christoph Clavius, and since that time the Jesuits have been highly involved in the study of astronomical sciences at the Vatican, showing by their example that faith and science go hand in hand.
What I find when I do my research is not that I'm going to prove God's existence with science. That's crazy. Any God that could be proved by science would be subservient to science, would be less than a real God. But by accepting as my first axiom that God is the one who created this universe, then I see God's personality in the way the universe works.
Currently, it's basically 14 Jesuit scientists, astronomers, physicists, who do research in science on behalf of the Church. They don't do the research any different than other scientists would do it, but they do it on behalf of the Church to show, by doing science, that the Church loves and embraces and encourages the sciences.
There are lots of different ways that the universe could have worked. And I know a lot of very clever theorists who will propose things to look for with a telescope like this. But when we see how God actually did do it, the choices he made here instead of there, we encounter something that the theologians call the scandal of particularity. God came at one particular time in one particular incarnation to speak to you and to me, not to humanity in general, but to each of us as individuals. And this is a particular universe that God created, and a universe that God gives freedom to.
When visitors come to see us here at the observatory, the first question they always have is, why does the Vatican have an observatory? Which seems to presuppose there's some kind of conflict of science and faith. My joking response at first is to say, oh, the Vatican has an observatory because we don't have enough money to have a particle accelerator.
So it's not a machine that is destined to always inexorably work out the way that the machinery has to, nor is it a puppet where every atom is on God's string. Instead, it is a universe that follows simple laws to develop the ability to have creatures like you and me who can recognize that we have a creator, who can recognize that we have the freedom to say, thank you, God, or go away, God, I want to do it myself my own way. And that sense of intellect and free will, which is what Aquinas called the soul, that is the essential characteristic of this universe, a universe that is free to love and worship God.
St. Augustine, it's from St. Thomas Aquinas, it's from First Vatican Council, from Pope Leo XIII. All the popes keep repeating, truth cannot contradict truth. Faith cannot contradict faith. God cannot contradict God. If God is the creator of this world, the author of the book of nature, and God is also the author of the book of Scripture, then in faith we believe these two things cannot disagree with each other.
The Vatican Museums are developing a project to include the Vatican Observatory as one of the visiting points, so visitors would be able to witness how faith and reason work together in discovering the magnitude of God's creation. The Vatican's Bambin Gesu Pediatric Hospital has successfully performed a bone marrow transplant for a coronavirus-positive child. The family arrived in Rome from London in October of 2019 to treat their 6-year-old boy with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. In March, the boy and both of his parents tested positive for COVID-19. The virus complicated the treatment for the little patient, who was already immunocompromised on account of his leukemia. To help eliminate the virus, the child was admitted to the hospital's special COVID-19 center and underwent treatment with plasma obtained from a donor who had already recovered from the virus. Once the young boy overcame COVID-19, it was possible to perform the long-awaited transplant with stem cells taken from his father, who meanwhile had also just recovered from the virus. The boy is now in healthy conditions, he didn't have any complications, and will undergo the normal post-transplant checkups. We'll be back after a short break with more on Vaticano. The World Health Organization here in Geneva, Switzerland, continues to caution, especially against large gatherings, to curb new infections of COVID-19.
We have seen that mass gatherings have the potential to act as super-spreading events.
For believers, participation in the holy sacrifice of the Mass is an essential part of life. We asked the Pope's envoy to the UN in Geneva if Catholics can obey governments without compromising the practice of the faith.
The Catholic Church, in the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, which is a very elaborated doctrine, has a statement, has a position that the Church recognizes the responsibility of the public authority for the public health. So there is no doubt that this is not going against our religious conviction.
With new Ebola outbreaks in Africa, protests all over the world, and no vaccine yet in sight for COVID-19, how do Catholics remain hopeful in such troubling times?
This is so important, not that we take things seriously, but on the other side, we avoid anything that would spread also useless fear. And this somehow inhibiting human capacity. And I think religious organizations, let's say, and churches, and our approach is exactly that. We are somehow fearless, you know. So we should be the first to stand this, this epidemic of panics. And I think this can be certainly overcome with a nice and proper how to say, education and also religious prayer, certainly prayer. No, prayers is one of the most important resources to overcome this.
Ben was born on November 29th, right, 1998. When he was 2.5, he was diagnosed with autism. No, Jenny. When she was not home right now. When he was 5.5, we started learning how to go to Mass. So I started taking him to church every Sunday, and at first, what he liked most was dipping his finger in the holy water so he could make the sign of the cross. That was your favorite thing? Okay, and then he likes putting the envelope in the collection basket. And now he likes shaking people's hands at church. Want to do it? No? Okay. I wanted him to understand and to learn how to participate in the Mass before he made his first Eucharist.
As Ben got older, he would look forward to going to Mass every Sunday, here at St. Joseph's Church in Maplewood, New Jersey, where Father Jim Worth is the pastor.
Ben just has a personality that's full of joy, and clearly I knew that he had special needs, but it was more of his personality that shined through. I think every single parishioner is in love with Ben, and it's been difficult for him because he's a man of routine.
We go to church every Sunday, every opportunity. And he'll tell me on a Saturday, 9 o'clock Monday. So we know. It's a community of people that have welcomed him and embraced him.
And the thing that Ben misses the most about not being at church is the music and singing.
Yeah, when he was younger, he would clap all the time at the end of the songs, but he knows not to do that now. So, but he's got his favorite songs, right? He gets very happy when Father Jim sings any of those.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live, a place where saints and sinners tell how hearts learn to forgive.
Father Jim is a talented musician and singer who once a month on a Tuesday would put on a mini concert called A Solace, and Ben loved them, never missing them.
What night did he do it on usually? That's right, on Tuesdays. We're hoping he'll do another one in 2 Tuesdays, Ben says.
All are welcome in this place.
So every single month he was used to coming to the church, rain or shine. His mother would take him, so it was a routine for him. And I felt that his routine was completely uprooted. So one of my goals was to give him something that was familiar to him.
Ben Hack is one of our parishioners who comes to the 9 o'clock Mass every week.
Knowing that Ben was really missing these special nights, Father Jim decided to broadcast a special solace on the parish website, which he called Ben's Solace.
He loves music and he loves the solaces, so...
During the hour-long show, Father Jim performed only music Ben liked, including his favorite song, All Are Welcome.
One of his favorite songs is All Are Welcome, which is what I'll start with.
Whether or not he understands the full concept of that song, that whole piece is basically telling everyone inside this church that there's not a single person here that shouldn't be here.
So sit back and relax, everyone, as we begin our Ben's Solace. Let us build a house where one can dwell and all can safely live.
Ben was thrilled to hear his name on the video and hear his favorite songs. And on the Tuesday nights when the Solace would normally be on in the church, his mother plays the concert for him again.
Oh, look at that. That's nice.
Next 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks?
Yes.
Will he have another Solace concert for you? What time?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. We're looking forward to that?
Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome.
Plug it all in.
Hey, Ben.
Ben.
Thank you.
No, awesome.
It was nice meeting you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That's awesome, is it?
Let us build a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word, built of tears and cries.
They are the true messengers of Jesus because they're giving the message not by some intellectual word, they're giving it by their example. So they're really leading with their hearts and not their minds. Their hearts go before them. It lets us understand that, yeah, we have gifts, but we also have difficulties. It makes a community more honest.
In this place.